So my research focuses on the birth of the English novel and the long 18th century. And the starting point for my project is the claim that novelists were, in the words of Walter Benjamin, isolated and solitary individuals. I argue that novelists were instead enmeshed in a series of networks. They were affected by literary reviews and the public. They were influenced by their families and literary connections, and they reused material from earlier texts. Tonight, I will discuss three major 18th century novelists and demonstrate how their creative process of composition was affected by literary, familial, and textual networks. The first author is Samuel Richardson, one of the fathers of the English novel. Richardson is best known as the author of Pamela, which was published in 1740. Pamela is a servant who is pursued by her predatory boss, Mr. B. After various attempts on her virtue, Mr. B finally marries the poor but worthy Pamela. The novel was extremely popular and provoked a massive cultural response similar to Twilight. There were literary adaptations, popular in their own right, like 50 Shades of Grey, as well as paintings, ladies' fans, and even playing cards. The novel was, and actually here are three examples. We have an operatic adaptation, and then the second one, it was parodied as Shamala, in which the heroine is revised as a gold digger. And finally, Pamela Censored, in which all of the lewd scenes were painstakingly analyzed. So Richardson was incensed by the public borrowing of his novel, so he wrote a bad sequel, Pamela in Her Exalted Condition, which he appended to the original. Pamela, too, shows that his writing was affected by the literary marketplace. So the second author tonight is Frances Burney, who is one of the most important novelists of the late 18th century, as well as one of Jane Austen's favorite authors. So if you enjoy Austen, and if you're looking for a good book to read, I encourage you to check out Burney's first novel, Evelina. Some of Burney's writings were highly influenced by her family, especially by her father, Dr. Charles Burney, who is pictured here. Her family suppressed her comic play, The Witlings, because they deemed it too satiric and potentially offensive. Burney's second novel, Cecilia, depicts a young orphaned heiress who will only keep her inheritance if she marries a man who is willing to adopt her last name. Unfortunately, the man she loves is a member of an old family, and she must give up her wealth in order to marry him. Burney's bittersweet ending has long been read as a sign of her artistic independence. However, in the manuscript, there are a number of deleted passages like this one, which can be recovered using methodologies I have pioneered in digital paleography. So here it comes. There we go. So the newly restored text from the novel's famous masquerade scene actually comprises a long episode describing the bizarre satanic rites of Cecilia's devious admirer, Mr. Monckton, who speaks in this episode in the Coptic language, and the transcription is here. So by interpreting Burney's suppression and revision of this scene alongside her letters, we can now see that she succumbed to familial pressures while writing the novel to remove innovative elements like these satanic scenes. So our final author, Jane Austen, requires no introduction. Very few of Austen's literary manuscripts survive. Actually, in general, very few novel manuscripts survive from the period because printers would inevitably destroy manuscripts as part of the publishing process. Austen's fourth planned but never completed novel is The Watsons, and it exists in manuscript fragments. It describes Emma Watson's return to her lower middle-class family after her rich aunt, who is seemingly her benefactress, suddenly marries a younger man. Austen's major revisions to this manuscript reveal details about her process of composition. Many of her changes display an increased concern with the precarious situation of women during the period. Similar themes emerge in Austen's later work. Persuasion was Austen's final completed novel, published in 1818 after her death. The novel is itself a revision. It takes place 8 years after Anne Elliot broke her engagement with Captain Wentworth, and it chronicles their reunion. Since Austen died before it was published, canceled manuscript drafts of 2 of the last chapters survive. By comparing the manuscript versions with the final versions, we can see again her proto-feminist leanings. These transcriptions from Persuasion and the Watsons will follow. So it is not a coincidence that Emma Watson's and Anne Elliot's best speeches are later revisions by Austen that concern the state of women. They show her clear attention to female vulnerability in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. From these 3 examples, then, we can draw preliminary conclusions. The innovative Richardson was swayed by the public. Burney's independent novel was actually influenced by her family, and the traditional Austen incorporated proto-feminist views. Thank you.